Welcome to the only daily podcast focusing on compliance news of the day. Each morning, start your day with a cup of coffee and Tom Fox, the voice of compliance, to hear about 4 of the top compliance, corruption, or leadership stories you will need to start your day. The Daily Compliance News is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network.
December 23rd, 2019, the Why Does He Even Still Have a Job edition. First up from Dylan Tokar over at the Wall Street Journal Risk and Compliance Journal, the UK Fraud Office loses yet another couple of individual trials where the founder and 2 employees of a UK seismic device company have been acquitted of charges they conspired to bribe a South Korean official. The company, Gurlop Systems, had settled related corruption charges with the UK's Serious Fraud Office in October. The acquittals, which were announced last Friday, are the latest instance of the SFO failing to secure individual prosecutions following the settlement with a corporation via a deferred prosecution agreement. So the SFA takes another black eye. If you are an energy company, and more specifically a fracking company, you have a new risk on the horizon, which is banks and their funding. They are working to, while they had helped to fuel the fracking boom, they're beginning to question the industry's fundamentals as shale wells are producing less than companies' forecasts, and banks have begun to tighten requirements on revolving lines of credits, an essential lifeline for smaller companies. These institutions estimate the value of some shale reserves held in collateral to be much lower than originally thought, and this tightening pressure on shale producers is one of the reasons many of them are facing a reckoning going into the next year. So we expect to see a large shakeout of and consolidation of fracking companies over the next year to 18 months, and banks cutting off funding will certainly be one of the reasons. The New York Times asks, is antitrust enforcement changing? As one reporter who has covered the tech industry for more than 2 decades explains that we may be entering a new progressive era of antitrust enforcement. This is around some of the biggest stories over the past year that big tech companies are becoming targets of antitrust enforcement. Really, anyone who's followed this understands this. But does this mean we're entering a new era? Well, the question certainly means a lot to many companies, including Facebook, Google, Amazon, and Apple. Whether it results in meaningful curbs on the companies will depend on large part of the persistence of the Department of Justice. One might think that a Republican administration might be less inclined to do so, although certainly the public outcry of the predatory practices and, quite frankly, ethical failures of the company has been the hue and cry has been large and loud. It's not clear whether or not the government will take that into account. And then finally, Boeing, which cannot seem to do anything other than shoot itself in the foot or areas higher in the body, had another yet incredible foobar from its CEO, Dennis Muilenburg. Last week, we noted that in a phone call to President Trump, he said that Boeing had completed its fix on the 737 MAX, but the regulators hadn't tested it or had not approved it. And he had a face-to-face meeting with the head of the FAA where he was told not to ask for any favors during the discussion, and he said Boeing should focus on providing the documentation needed to fully describe the plane's software changes, that indeed they had not given the FAA all of the information that had been requested. So it's going to be interesting to see if Trump will take the side of Boeing in the face of the lack of safety approvals from the FAA, but we'll just have to continue to watch. The Daily Compliance News is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network.